All right, everyone, we can call this meeting to order. So we have an agenda. I just want to make a couple of notes to the agenda. Addition of the adoption of the minutes from the March 24th meeting. And Dave Cash has provided us with an update on the broadband tracker report. So those are two additional items. And can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I've got one update that needs to be done on
James?
the minutes. On item 7.2 regarding SWIFT, it was recorded that SWIFT was going to pass 58,000 homes and businesses in the region. That should actually read 1,600, not 58,000.
Okay. Do we have
that? Thank you.
Quite a difference, James.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Jake.
you got us excited. Yeah. All right.
I like the first number better.
So I don't have a 7.2. I have a 7.
We have a 7, 7.1, 7.2 SWIFT commitment affecting Brant with ICON.
Okay.
Yep, it's there. I see it. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any other additions? Sorry. No. All right.
They're
so
wonderfully done.
may we have a motion then? And I believe. All right. Pamela, seconder. And all in favor? Right, so passed, motion is passed. So item number 3, adoption of minutes for previous meetings. Did everyone receive those minutes?
We
Did you have a
just
chance?
approved them.
Yeah, we did see them, everybody? Yeah, okay. Well, that was the agenda, sorry.
Oh,
So we do need an approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Motion, Dave Cash, yes. Seconder, Councillor Miller, all in favor? All right. Motion is passed. Item 4, presentation from Brett Smith, Ministry of Infrastructure, and we're joined by Michelle Thomas as well from the Ministry of Infrastructure today. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us. Brett, we had an earlier meeting with you that was, I thought, very informative. So appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. And I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. So I'll speak to a little bit of a high level on where we're at with some initiatives and talk a bit more specifically about the work that we're doing to reach every premise, which is associated with the geospatial mapping work that we do and the analysis associated with that to try to identify underservice in the province. So the government has a policy objective of bringing high-speed internet access to everybody by the end of 2025. What that means is 50 megabits per second download, 10 megabits per second upload speed to every single premise in the province. That has led to different initiatives, many of which are underway. Some are coming to a close, and what we believe are additional work that will need to be done to ensure that we meet that commitment. To date, we've committed over $900 million to several different initiatives. That's expected to reach about 375,000 underserved premises across the entire province. That includes SWIFT, as well as improving connectivity for Ontario, as well as a partnership that we have with Canada to co-invest up to $1.2 billion in projects all across the province. That was announced back in July 29, 2021. And you may have seen some update announcements over the last few weeks about some of those projects where we're identifying the internet service providers and the specific dollar amounts associated with the individual projects. Now we're at the stage of the reverse auction, which is coming to a commercial close, and that's expected to happen very soon. There was an RFQ, which was to identify eligible bidders for that process. And then the RFP, request for proposals, was launched on November 30th, 2021. and closed at the beginning of March after a series of bid events were led all across the province for each of the auction lots that were designed. The stage we're at now is validating the bids that have come in, which will lead to executing funding agreements for those successful proponents. And the expectation that there would be an announcement following the execution of those agreements. And there is a great deal of effort to try to get that completed as quickly as possible, with the intent of trying to get these projects underway so people can get access to the service, the 5010 minimum service for these projects. So I'm not at a stage yet to be able to talk about those results because I don't know those results. They're being led by Infrastructure Ontario, which ran this competitive process and took fairly significant measures to ensure that it was competitive and fair, and avoided any types of interventions from government in that entire process. What we expect is that there will still be some premises that are underserved across the province, even at the end of the auction process. And there were some measures that were taken with the auction to ensure that there were bids for all of the auction lots, which allowed for a little bit of flexibility. There wasn't a requirement for 100% coverage through that initiative. The task of trying to identify where all those premises are is a bit of a challenge, but one that we think we have in hand. We work very closely with Canada, which is responsible for receiving information from internet service providers on where they are providing services and the levels of those service and the technology that they're using to provide that service. With that information, we look at where those coverage areas and where are their premises across the province. And we use that to estimate a count of the number of premises that remain underserved when we look at what's currently underway, what are internet service providers already providing. We also look at the projects that we've approved, including the 900 million that I've talked about. We look at exactly what roads those projects are serving to determine whether they will get the 5010 service and what's left. When the auction process is complete, we'll be able to incorporate those projects into our data set. We're intending to apply some more sophisticated data sets to try to identify and count the remaining underserved areas, including using Municipal Property Assessment Corporation data, impact data, and also with our relationship with Canada, getting more anonymized information about exactly where are the service territories so that we can geospatially identify what is getting 5010, what isn't getting 5010 service, and we can narrow in on what's left. And then for that third stage of ensuring that we meet our commitment of everybody having 5010 service by the end of 2025, figuring out what additional steps we may need to take to reach those additional premises. I have a high level of confidence in our ability to be very specific and precise about what areas are remaining, and what will be left is for the government to think through what that suite of initiatives or single initiative needs to be undertaken so that we can reach those premises. Canada makes a lot of efforts to validate the information that comes in. I can't speak entirely on their behalf on this because it's an internal process that they undertake to look at what internet service providers show them for their service areas, and the validation that they undertake to make sure that that's actually the service that's being provided. And fixed wireless is a concern and a question and a focus area for Canada on how they look at those submissions from internet service providers. And they are taking steps to look at the fixed wireless service claims from internet service providers much more closely to see, are they actually providing that service or not? And we intend to work closely with them as they work through that validation process to identify, are these areas really getting the 5010 service? And if not, we can incorporate that into our mapping activities and into our future plans to ensure that we meet the 2025 commitment. And this will be ongoing work over the next few weeks and months to look at what's the right solution to reach those communities and make sure, I should say communities and premises, and to make sure that our data is accurate and up to date as possible, so that we're not leaving anybody behind. Any questions about that general overview?
Can I
Dave?
jump in, Sue? Sure.
Yes, Dave, you have.
Thanks, Brett, and I appreciate your presentation. And I know we had a brief chat earlier. I probably should have maybe done a bit of a contextual setting for your presentation, but in a nutshell, we obviously are very excited about the reverse auction process and the fact that it's going to bring a better high speed for us. Our concern has always been that if Infrastructure Ontario is relying on the federal government's database, affectionately known as the ISED mapping, of where there was under and unserved people, our experience has been for parts of Brant anyway, it's just not accurate, and others have confirmed this for us. So basically the concern was that this funding wasn't going to be directed to those areas. In other words, if an area already is shown on this mapping as having high speed, of course, why would you spend government money to hire on an ISP to put the service in when it's already there? The difficulty is, particularly for fixed wireless, which is, as you mentioned, lots of folks don't have that actual service. And the data that the ISPs provide to ISED has been sort of extrapolated along roads based on, some kind of algorithm or something. I don't understand it, fortunately, but that was is our main concern. And I sort of take it from your presentation that you're going to take, I guess, some extra steps. You're probably not able to get into the details really, but extra steps to help work with the feds to verify their data and make sure that, for example, areas of Brant that may be shown as having high speed and actually don't are actually going to get it. And I guess the difficulty we're having is that we have never really kind of heard that in plain English out there in the real world. But if we kind of have an assurance, because you've talked about even a third stage where you're going to go out and catch all those folks that got missed this time around with the reverse auction. Are you able to kind of explain or give us an assurance that that I'm kind of reading it right, that we're actually going to get the 5010 in rural Brant, regardless of what the ISPs say there is out there?
Yeah, I can speak to those points. I think there's two layers to the commentary on the ISED data that is publicly available that you can retrieve from the service availability map website. One is that the data itself was last published on January 14th, 2021. We have a relationship with Canada to ensure that our program delivery is as accurate as possible to what is the current service level. And the goal there is to avoid overbuilding, because we don't want to use public funds to invest in competition in areas that already have a service. So that's one layer. And we've been able to work with them on unpublished data so that our programs are as up to date as possible. And it's the federal government's interest as well in the programs that they're delivering to avoid overbuild for the same reasons. The second layer to that is the degree to which the fixed wireless claims are accurate or not. And we are working with Canada to try to have those assessments completed of those service areas so that we can incorporate the results of those assessments into whatever work we need to do to meet our 2025 target. So although we might not be able to incorporate all the most updated information into the auction process to account for any of those updates in service territories or any of the changes in service territories based on those analyses, the province wants to get those updates. So whatever it needs to do to meet its 2025 commitment, we can design around that updated data. So we want to get that done as quickly as possible. Obviously, we don't want there to be gaps after we determine what are the steps that we need to take to meet that commitment, only to find out that there are changes in those service territories. This is also a moving target as well, because there's private investment going on all the time, and we don't have a direct line of sight on those private investments. From time to time, ISPs will make announcements and claim that they're about to provide service in different areas. And sometimes those public comments misalign with when they actually do the work and the information that they submit to Canada and the time at which Canada processes that information and feeds into the data that we receive so that we can administer our programs and identify remaining areas of underservice. Every effort will be made to try to identify as accurately as possible where are those remaining areas of underservice, including looking at where there are claims for the fixed wireless 5010 service available.
So following up on that, if I may, Madam Chair, is there a, one of the things this committee discussed last meeting, at our first meeting, was, what is it that we can do to help the process from a mapping point of view? And James and a few of the others were sort of acquainting us with the potential to do some kind of, I hate to use the term crowd sourcing of data, but I guess that's what it's called these days, where people would actually submit their actual speeds to a neutral third party that would, and it would be done according to some criteria and rigor. And then these would be mapped so that, and we would provide that information to the province and the feds and say, hey, even though it shows these areas have high speed, look, they really don't, or whatever the case may be. And we were thinking, if we went down that road of crowdsourcing that information, and there are some resources out there we might be able to use, that might be helpful to make sure that parts of Brant, didn't get missed. What can you comment on that? Is that something, I know you wouldn't be able to say we should do, but is that something that's going to be helpful if we decided to do that, or is that just needless work that we don't need to do?
The process that Canada undertakes doesn't, and the assessment process that they use to validate whether the service is being provided, and it's a fairly advanced process that they intend to use with fixed wireless service. And I just want to note, I am speaking on behalf of the federal government. They are much better placed to talk specifically about how they run those processes. They don't use speed test data by CIRA to run those assessments. They'll be using a different set of parameters, which includes looking at the specific technology that is in the field and the catchment area for those services to assess whether there is a 5010 service or not. And then through that process, we intend to work with them to get updated information on those areas so that we can incorporate that into our planning and our identification of remaining areas of underservice in the province. It does take quite a bit of work to independently identify premises and essentially people to run those speed tests, and to do it in such a way that it provides reliable information on what are those service levels. That includes the number of times of day that you run the test over a period of time, so that you can try to identify a pattern of the service levels. And I think this is something that ISPs do when they offer services where there can be congestion on the system at certain points of the day, but there's a determination on how much of the day can somebody reliably get a 5010 service or the service level that they're offering, and does that constitute being able to provide that level of service? And we don't regulate the sector, that is federal jurisdiction. It is up to ISPs to some degree to come up with those parameters and the way that they work with customers to provide a good service for them. And that includes how many people are they enrolling and what kind of congestion does that cause on the system, and are people actually getting those services. So it does take a lot of work to collect that information. I can't say definitively whether that's useful or not. Canada has received that data from other groups before, and I don't know how they process or use that data. We have a policy objective to reach everybody with reliable high-speed internet by the end of 2025. So we will be working with Canada and necessarily advancing or advocating for our agenda, which means seeking their support to review these areas of service to make sure that our estimations are accurate on where we still need to do more work to ensure there is reliable high-speed internet.
And I appreciate that. Maybe a follow-up, Madam Chair, is that, you know, I guess the trouble with it is you folks are giving out grants to these guys to provide 50/10 to the underserved and unserved only, which is perfectly right, because you don't want to be funding needless competition for above that. And yet there just doesn't seem to be a sort of a way that communities can kind of validate the you know, that part of the process. Sure, I know you'll get to us eventually, you know, I have a vision of and I know internet providers would never do this, but you know, they're running services in an area, and where it's not maybe profitable to go, they might not, and some people might get left behind in Brant. And so there's just doesn't sound like there's a way other than jumping up and down and providing your own data that people or businesses out in the rural areas are going to be able to say, hey, I don't have it and I got missed. And I know it doesn't, I know federally that's their responsibility, but you folks are, you and I in Infrastructure Ontario are giving out the dough. I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just sort of putting a point on it. So I guess what we can do as a committee is kind of keep an eye on things, I guess, and that's sort of in our mandate, to try and help the process. That's what we want to do. And if as it's rolled out over the next couple of years, we are aware of people or businesses in Brant that appear to be maybe not getting the service, maybe there'll be a process that'll come along, like you said, that third phase of your process where you could look into it a little bit deeper and maybe get it rectified. Is that a fair thing for me to say?
Yeah, I believe so. We have, like, the ministry has been working closely with Association of Municipalities of Ontario and engaging directly with municipalities to design programs and to make sure that the design of the programs are responsive to municipal needs and interests. I think we share the goal, we being the collective we government, of making sure everybody has access. And the challenge there is having the right data to confirm that we've identified all those areas of underservice. The funding is all designed to get internet service providers to overcome the capital barrier that prevents them from, through their own private investments, expanding their networks to reach those places. So I think that's a fundamental component of the design. And we've been also, while doing all this work, trying to figure out ways that we can make public the information on where projects are occurring. Ontario Builds has recently been updated to show all of our commitments to date for projects. So there's, I think now 248 different project data points on Ontario builds for broadband projects, which also includes the Cell Gap project in Eastern Ontario. And we are looking at ways that we could enhance the quality of the data that shows on that website. Right now, it's just centroids, which is just a point on a map that's at the center of where a project would occur. And some projects are very small, and those centroids are very accurate to where those projects are occurring. Some of the projects are very large and cover several counties or municipalities. You may have seen Swift's mapping, where they show the roadways of the different projects and the leads and the timeframes for the project. We are looking at that as a potential model for when we finalize our funding agreements beyond the commitments that we've made, to be able to also present that information. But we need to think through what that could look like, and work with our leadership to make those updates to our website, so there's much more accurate information about what we're doing. And I guess in some ways that will give you more tools to hold us accountable to making sure that we're reaching all of the areas of underservice.
Wonderful news, Madam Chair. I'm sorry for asking so many questions.
That's okay, Dave. That's why we have you here. Does anyone else have any questions of the ministry? James, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair. Question for Brett. This is a two-part question on consuming the services. First is, how do residents in the area know what ISP was provided the funding to put the hardware in the ground, to be able to know that they have to switch from one ISP to the other ISP to be able to get that high-speed internet? For instance, I might be on Bell, and I don't even know that Rogers won the contract and everybody else in the area with Rogers has that. How does the consumer know to switch to Rogers or to Bell or to another ISP to be able to get the high-speed internet that was provided by the federal or the provincial government? Second part to that question is also on the consuming of it. Is there wording in the contracts with the ISPs to provide the municipality themselves, like the County of Brant municipality, to use the ISP's service at a reduced rate to help connect our facilities?
So first part, sorry, can you repeat the question? I just want to make sure I get all the points.
Yeah, so the first part, they're both on consuming. The first one is, how does the consumer know what ISP won the contract for their area so they could get the highest speed internet available? Right.
So two parts to that response. The first is, when we made our initial announcements of the commitment of funding, we hadn't yet executed our funding agreements with the recipients. And because of an interest to potentially protect their commercial interest, we didn't announce at that time, back in July 26th, July 29th, I think October 25th. And I believe once more in December, are different projects that have been approved. We only described which communities would be reached and the total number of premises that would be reached. We are now at the stage where we're executing those funding agreements, and we're working with the applicants that have been offered the funding to identify the internet service providers that will be providing that service. So there were what we call echo announcements, which provide additional information with those projects that were announced last year. There was one on March 25th, another on March 29th, and then one on Tuesday this week on April 19th, where we're providing more details on who is the internet service provider that will be providing the service to the communities that were identified in the previous announcement, as well as the total funding commitment for those projects. So that's one side of it, where we're using our conventional news release, Ontario Newsroom, to put the word out about the status of those projects and who's going to be delivering those services. The second is that under the agreements that we're executing, this is all under commercial terms. Everybody that is getting the funding is a private sector entity that has an interest to acquire as many customers as possible so that they can receive the revenue. And we rely on their efforts to communicate their services to potential customers and get the word out of those opportunities for advanced services, including if there was no 5010 service before, to now have the opportunity to get a 5010 service. So there's an expectation for the recipients to provide that communication. We have as a requirement under our funding agreements as well to confirm that they've completed their project, to demonstrate that they've marketed their service at the end of the project. But it will be in their interest as they incrementally build their project to be communicating that information to potential new clients that now are within the catchment area or are premises passed with that infrastructure. So if they're building a fiber line down a road, they are probably incrementally going to be advertising to those premises on those roads once they are activated, that they can now get this service. So I think there's a combination of things. We're providing our own public announcements associated with the projects, but there's also the expectation of the ISPs that want to acquire those customers to get the word out to those customers that they now have that opportunity for a higher speed internet service. The second point to your question, we have not designed into any of our funding agreements preferential rates for municipal customers. We treat all premises similarly, and we're counting all premises similarly. The way the province is counting premises are households, businesses, and institutions. And we're requiring applicants to try to identify customers based on those categories. For institutions, we consider municipal institutions as well, like libraries or community centers or other municipal facilities that would fall into that category. So we are counting that when we're looking at service, but we haven't identified any requirements or set any expectations for the type of rates for the services offered to those institutions.
Anyone
All right,
else?
thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Anyone else? Any questions? Councillor Miller, have you got your hand up? Recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions just about the whole provincial program. Through you, Madam Chair, to Brett, and I appreciate you coming today. This has been quite informative. When you're doing the RFQ process, in the bidding process, are you technology neutral, or do you put did you put more emphasis on fiber in the ground?
There was emphasis on fiber for the project. Sorry, for the reverse auction and for our programs. We saw in our application-based program significantly more applications related to fiber. And with reverse auction, from the RFQ to the RFP stage, there were efforts to increase the amount of fiber. So originally, the auction lots were identified as either fiber or fixed wireless based on a number of factors, including population density and the funding that would be available to support the expansion of broadband networks in all of those areas. As we moved from the RFQ to the RFP stage, there was some flexibility afforded in allowing applicants to submit fiber bids in fixed wireless lots. This provided an opportunity to increase the amount of fiber coverage in those areas. And there was some expansion of and some changing in the auction lots from one technology to the other based on the available resources. So there has been a focus on ensuring fiber for solutions. But like Canada, there is a desire to remain to some degree technology agnostic, because the ultimate goal is ensuring that everybody has access to 5010 service, and fiber might not be the solution in every circumstance to get that 5010 service to everybody.
Okay, so 5010, when you go wireless, my understanding is as you add more people, the service tends to degrade somewhat. How are you guaranteeing that the 5010 service is maintained? Have you set in the terms of agreement that they have to maintain it for X number of years? How do you guarantee that?
So there's a different answer based on the program or initiative where government funding is supporting the projects. Under the reverse auction, there will be service requirements after the construction of the project is completed. For other investments, including under the ICON program and the UBF program, there's significant front end work done to assess the technological design and the network design of the projects to determine with a high likelihood the ability to provide a 5010 service, which included consideration of scalability. So we looked at the population density in the areas that would be served by fixed wireless proposals. We looked at the equipment and the technologies that would be used. For instance, if there's a fixed wireless tower, would that tower be connected with a fiber optic link, or would it receive its network access or its capacity from a microwave link, which we know results in a deteriorated service from one tower to the next. So we took into consideration those factors to determine, will there be a 5010 service or will there not be? With our programs, we use that technical feasibility assessment to determine whether or not to fund projects or to recommend to decision makers whether to fund those projects or not. But for those projects, when they complete, we intend to do site inspections of those projects to look at, did you install the equipment you said you're going to install? And is it providing the service at the level that you committed to in the funding agreement? And they are obligated to meet those terms and conditions, one of the most important being that you are providing a 5010 service. So it's very much within our deliverables oversight of our funding to make sure that the technology is there and that it's scalable to meet its commitments, that it will reach the premises and be able to provide those premises with the 5010 service.
Okay, I would have preferred the X number of years, but that's okay. The two more questions here, Madam Chair. Second last question. By the end of 2025, if you look at all the underserved premises in the province of Ontario and all these reverse auctions are implemented, what percentage of underserved premises are still going to be underserved? Is it, in the 20, 25, 50%? Any thoughts on that? Any ideas?
Sorry, could you rephrase your question? Are you talking specifically about what do things look like when the reverse auction process completes, or is that
No.
about?
Well, my understanding is the province has said that everybody in the province of Ontario who's underserved is going to have high speed at the end of 2025, but that's not going to be the case. But what percentage of premises that don't have high speed now are still not going to have high speed when all is said and done by the end of 2025? And the reason I'm asking this is because I get a lot of people calling me, telling them that they don't have high speed, blah, blah, blah. They're quite upset, and I don't blame them. But then I talk about the provincial program, but I'm not sure that we're going to get everybody by the end of 2025.
Mm-hmm. So don't mean to be cute in this response, but the direction that we have in the design of our initiatives is to reach everybody with a 5010 service by the end of 2025 within the $4 billion that's been committed towards meeting that goal. We don't have a plan, and we don't intend to have a plan in place for there to be premises that remain underserved by 2025. The intent is to reach all of them through a suite of initiatives. There's one thing that we haven't discussed yet, but there are areas that are underserved that are very remote. But we have a funding agreement in place with Telesat Canada. And under that funding agreement, we have dedicated capacity in Ontario. And the way Telesat works is when they have their low Earth orbit network set up, they would provide network access where there isn't the opportunity to use a fixed wireless or a fiber service. And we believe we could hit thousands of premises across Ontario leveraging that technology when it's up and running through that agreement we have. So that is in consideration for initiatives that we could use to make sure that no one is left behind, that we reach every single premise. So that's what we're planning against, and we don't have a number of premises that we might not miss.
All right,
Or
fair
that we
enough.
might miss.
And December 31st, 2025, I want your email and I want your contact info just in case. So, okay, I appreciate that, because like I say, I do get a lot of people contacting me about, because obviously Swift, the reason I'm asking is because Swift has come in with their 4 projects and we're only hitting maybe 25%, right, of the underserved premises. So that leaves 75% out of the loop. And which is for those that are left, for those that get high speed, they're happy. For those left out of the loop, you can imagine they're quite upset. Last question then, Madam Chair. And we touched on it a little bit earlier today, but I want to know, while you're here, because we got to take advantage of you, is what role do you see municipalities playing? Now, you mentioned maybe some help with the data mapping as far as, getting the tax data. I know there's going to be some pressure on us to get the permitting done quickly, as far as right away and all those things. Do you see any other role? Because here, I mean, we have a fellow from, roads. We got a fellow from IT, right? What would you say to us to help, or do you see, would you require any help from municipalities to get this going? Because we'll do anything we can, So.
And I very much appreciate that offer, and any good bureaucrat would accept the offer of support wherever possible. And I don't want to come off as sounding cocky or presumptuous. There is a high level of confidence that the data that we have acquired and will be getting on a regular basis through our partnership with Canada, so that we can plan our initiatives, we will have a fairly accurate line of sight of what are areas of remaining underservice. I think more generally, there is an ongoing engagement that we intend to have with municipalities, since they have been such good partners and advocates, and also to some degree advisors on the design of our initiatives. We have, through our different initiatives, moved through different formats through which we get bids through procurement processes or competitive application-based programs, which relied a great deal on the sector to define the areas of service that they want to act in. And that's how Swift worked, but resulted in some gaps in their service, because there wasn't a requirement for them to reach 100% of the service area. Because we have that as our objective, as our policy objective, 100% coverage by the end of 2025, we have to look to what are the steps we need to take and what are the design features we have to implement for any of the initiatives that we would use to meet that commitment. And because of that, there is an expectation for the ministry that is responsible for designing these initiatives and identifying these gaps of service on what we need to do to reach those very last premises. So we have to plan internally on how we can acquire that information. At this stage, there isn't a dependency on municipalities to provide that support. But as I said, I think ongoing conversations and working with partners like AMO to engage on issues, concerns, things like that is going to be an ongoing key feature of the work that we do to make sure that we meet our targets.
Okay, I appreciate the answers. I appreciate your confidence and your optimism. So we'll hold you to it. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? We're at 1:45. Yes. I recognize Rick Sroka. Rick, you need to take yourself off mute. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
And so.
Just what you're saying has been very promising, and I think certainly needed, and hopefully everything comes out the way you're saying it's going to come out. I'm a small rural customer. I'll never have fiber down my road. Presently, I have line of sight wireless, and I'll probably have the 5010 But I guess what is my recourse if in the morning I've got 5010 and then at 8 o'clock in the evening, I want to stream Game of Thrones and get my little circle thing. Is there any recourse? I know I can't go after the government. I can try with my provider, and they gave me a $25 discount the one time that I complained about the service. But what do I do as a consumer? And you know, I don't have the power of the Brant County, or maybe I do at election time. But what do I do? Do I have any recourse? Is there something that there's going to be a follow-up to say, well, okay, your road shows 5010, but my speed is 5?
So as a customer, and with respect to you know, regulatory responsibility, Ontario doesn't have any tools to offer you recourse for your service. It's outside of our regulatory jurisdiction. That being said, we get questions like this from time to time, and our typical advice is to try to work through your internet service provider to ensure that you get that service.
Mm-hmm.
I can't recall the name, but there is an ombudsman type function outside of the CRTC that is responsible for receiving complaints where there is a service that's being offered and that service is not being provided to customers. So we can try to find the link to that organization and provide that to you. Not to say that that provides immediate relief, but there is an opportunity for customers to seek some recourse if they feel that they're not getting the service that they're paying for.
Okay, I know with my provider, they've offered me the service, but in the contract there is a stipulation that they can knock back the power if there's a lot of usage. So hopefully, you know, we can kind of get around this, and with the 5010, that we get the better service. So thank you for your response.
Thank you, Rick. Anyone else? Okay, because I think we've taken up quite a bit of your time, Brett, and we really appreciate you doing this today, taking the time to be with us today. And Michelle, thank you as well for being with us. Appreciate that too. So onward and upward.
Mm-hmm. With that, I take it we are leaving.
I think if you,
You're welcome to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming we're all right to have you stay if you wish to stay and you want to continue to provide information as we go along, but we won't make you talk anymore. If you want to stick around, you're more than welcome.
I note the next item on the agenda is about the associated legislative requirements. So I'm happy to stay if any questions come up associated with that as well.
All right, I think that would be wonderful. I think we would like that very much. So then we'll move on to item 5, if we may. And we have Greg Demers with us from the Roads Department. Greg, nice to meet you. I don't think I've ever met you before. So you're going to speak to this new legislation, I'm assuming, that's just been introduced. Is that part of what you're talking to us about today, or?
Myself, yes, I was invited. Sorry, I was late. I was missed on the invite list. I had the opportunity to meet with Brett earlier this morning, and he has addressed a lot of our concerns with the timelines, and I think we're going to be in a good spot to work with the providers. The big thing that was missing was the legislative times. We were concerned about them. We've given, especially when it comes to municipal access agreements, MAAs, there's a whole process there that can take up to 2 months to complete from the time a new provider comes in that wants to bury infrastructure within our road allowance. There's a whole process that has to go through lawyers, and it also has to be taken to council through a report. So we've talked to Brett about that, and he's going to take that information away and take it back to their working group and to discuss how we get through that and still meet the timelines. And because it was a new question that we brought up, and it was a unique question, as there's been many concerns brought up across the province. Brett, we're going to give Brett some time to take that away to his working group and bring us back a response how we deal with that. The timelines might just be when the MC process, the municipal consent process, starts, and we've gone through that, and there is tight timelines, but they're workable timelines now that we understand them fully. If there is discrepancies, the clock resets, and to give us more time. If an application is incomplete, we send it back for the ISP to fill it out more complete, send it back to us, and then we'll have that 10 or 15 days to process that permit. We only have one individual in the county that does this work for municipal consents, driveway accesses. So what we were worried about support, and Brett has informed us that there is going to be a technical group set up by the province that we can liaise with and we can work with. So that took some of the pressure off too, that we're not going to be going into this blind. There's some upcoming training that's going to come that myself, our road technologist, Braden, who will be attending along with Jason DeMonk. We're going to have some staff trained, and anything we see that might be a hurdle for Brant County, we're going to reach directly out to the ministry. We're going to work with this technical group, and Brett also offered, if we're not making any headway with the technical group, that I could reach out to him directly and to see if we can get any issues that are resolved. But we did feel much better after leaving the meeting this morning with Brett that there is some things coming down. I think our letter to the minister was received quite well, because Brett responded quite quickly, met with us, provided lots of good answers. Of course, we still have some concern because it's new and I have nothing tangible in my hands. I'm very much a black and white person. Let's follow the rules. But there seems to be some room, as this is a new process and as we grow, there is some room here, either side of that 10 or 15 days that have been stipulated in this. But from a roads perspective, we have a commitment to the business community also to process these permits as fast as we can and efficiently as we can to make sure people aren't without broadband. So we're going to take part in the training and we're going to do our part. So I don't know if I missed anything, Brett, that you might want to add.
May I jump in?
Yes, Brett, you have the floor.
Just one small thing, Greg. I followed up with our team about the municipal access. That is outside of the requirements that are defined in the Building Broadband Faster Act. So if that was missing and an ISP applied for a permit, that would be considered a material deficiency. So they would need to have that in place, and the 10 to 15 day timeline does not apply to the municipal access agreement. So that's something that needs to be in place before the permitting exercise.
Okay, excellent. So that's we had about a 45-minute meeting this morning, Madam Chair, and we got a lot of good stuff out of that. So I think we're in a good position to tackle this. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you very much. And thank you, Brett, again. It sounds like you've been making friends all over the place here, which is great. I mean, you really have given us a lot of information that we didn't have. That's certainly helping us find our way forward. So again, thank you. I don't know if you want to stay on and remain for the rest. Oh, Councillor Miller, I recognize.
Just yeah, one question, and I read most of that BFA, Building Broadband Faster Act. My understanding is, and maybe Greg or even Brett could correct me on this, Are we allowed to invoice for costs incurred by the municipality for these projects? I thought I read something about
I'm sorry, I don't have an answer. Can I take that away, Councillor Miller? And then perhaps I can come back through Sue to provide that response.
Okay, yeah, because I know you've got one portal online to upload all the stuff. That's my understanding. And there would be training involved to train somebody on staff to upload that information and all that stuff. And yeah, if you could look into that, because my understanding was we could invoice for some of those costs. So yeah, if you could help us out with that, that'd be great.
All right. Anyone else? All right, so that was item 5. So we're going to move on to item 6, which is the Wellington Connectivity Guidebook Transferable Components. Russ Press. Oh, just a moment. Floor goes to James Rickard. Recognize James. You've got a question or a statement or?
Sorry, Madam Chair.
No,
Item
sorry.
number 7 on the list, we might be able to get some information from Brett also, and that is regarding the SWIFT fiber optic expansion project that was announced by the province. Was it on yesterday? It just seems kind of confusing, and maybe while Brett's online, if he doesn't want to leave or wants to leave, we could have item 7 reviewed at the same time.
All right, everyone all right with that? We'll move. Dave?
Well, just maybe to help Brett out, and that's a good question. I asked that it be put on the agenda just because we touched on it at our first meeting that SWIFT had identified a number of areas in Brant for projects, and initially one was announced in the south, and then there was a new announcement of these 4 areas. So we're just a little confused if this is the same project that's been re-announced a few times. It's just that the geography has changed. That was, and I don't know if Brad actually has that information.
So the SWIFT program was formerly run out of a different ministry, and there were efforts to consolidate broadband investment activities within the Ministry of Infrastructure. And I was formerly the manager responsible for SWIFT when it came into the Ministry of Infrastructure. We still work with the Ministry of Rural Affairs for all announcements associated with SWIFT initiatives. The approach that's taken with both SWIFT doing announcements of its project and the ministry and the government doing announcements about the project is to some degree provide incremental updates on what's happening with the individual projects. So all of the projects had been approved for SWIFT. All of the 89 or 90 projects that are being directly funded by the province had been determined by I believe March of last year. So all agreements had been executed with the suppliers or the contractors. Those are the ISPs that are building the projects that were approved by SWIFT. Sometimes there is a delay in when those projects are initiated. And I believe the announcement that you saw, I think it was yesterday or perhaps the day before, with respect to the projects in Brant County, that was an announcement of the same projects that were previously announced, but by government. This time, the government led that announcement, whereas previously it was the supplier that had identified that these projects were occurring. But it was also to note that the construction was beginning for these projects. I believe one of the project areas had changed based on some issues that had arisen with the original project area. So that project was rescoped to capture more areas of Brant County than was originally proposed.
Makes sense, Dave? Is that?
Yeah, it would be, this is a real minor point, but when you first look at it, you think it's another new project, but it's the same project. And it would have been really cool if it had said, this is an update and these are the changes. But we accomplished the review and figured that out. So thanks, Brett, and thank you for clarifying that for us. That was why I put it on the agenda, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Recognize Councillor Miller.
I'm going to add a little bit to what Brett said. One of the areas, there was 4 projects initially announced for Brant County, and that's the geographical Brant County. Now, Brant County includes 6 nations. The project on the 6 nations is not going ahead through SWIFT. They are going through with some federal funding. So that money from SWIFT was reallocated, and that's why the projects were slightly different. So I believe the SWIFT mapping is reflective of that as of today. So
Thank you, Councillor Miller. All right, so we're good on 7. Can I move then back to item 6? You're good with that? All right, and Russ, you're going to speak to us about the transferable components from the Wellington Connectivity Guidebook.
Madam Chair, my part of this seems mildly deflating compared to what we've talked about. So I'll do my best to keep you engaged. To be perfectly honest with you, with this, and I don't know, Briar, if you're able to share the Wellington County workbook or connectivity guidebook rather, or if you'd like me to. Okay. I've gone through and identified some areas that in the guidebook that might not be areas that we want to dive into or want to include or look at that we would think might be inclusive if we were to go down that path. I'm not saying that this is something we should do. I'm just saying that in reviewing it, it might be a tool that might help. And some of the questions that have been asked of Brett, and I must say, Brett, my level of knowledge of where we are and what's happening and that sort of thing, even though I've been reviewing this pretty consistently for the last number of months, has just gone up exponentially after your presentation. So I thank you very much and appreciate it. If we can just kind of go through this and take a look at it, it is if I were living in Wellington County and receive this, it definitely would be an aid to me for sure. There's if nothing else, the glossary in the back of it is fantastic. So and it goes right to the other end, to the other spectrum, where there's people that are well versed in connectivity and internet and that sort of thing. And there would be some additional information and updating of programs and types of technology that are happening in the county of Wellington that maybe they didn't know of. So even though they were very well versed in the technology. So I think it's a guide that anytime, my opinion is anytime you're able to bring up the level of education on technology for the general population, it's a good thing. It helps with the questions, it helps with the answers, and most of all, it helps in using the technology. So that being a premise, just going through the guidebook, page 7 and 8 of the guidebook, there's a couple areas that I maybe wouldn't include and some areas that I'll highlight. So page 7 and 8, so there's a little bit of a problem with the order. Well, thank you for giving me the control there, Briar. I appreciate that. Just quickly, we provided the guidebook ahead of time, so hopefully you've had a chance to take a look. I don't want to take up too much time on this, and it's not something that needs to be decided right now, of course, whether it's something that's provided as advice to council moving forward, but just as we can collectively go through the guidebook and get a basis for it. I like how it was laid out about this guidebook and how it might be used. I think that's very valuable. I think a lot of guidebooks, I've compared this to a couple of other guidebooks, some involving technology, some not. But how to use the guidebook and what this guidebook is for is helpful. It's just a couple of paragraphs on that, but I think it's pretty helpful. It gives a map of Wellington and the areas that would be included. So with a lot of the new migration.
Sorry, Madam Chair, can we pause? Sorry, I'm just going to pass the presentation back to you, Russ, because okay. I can't tell which one you're on and I don't want to mess you up.
Sure.
Let me stop. Excuse me a second. If I can get this down. Okay. Okay, back to you, Russ. Thank you.
I may have lost my. I'm changing the screens on my page. Are you seeing that?
No.
Yes.
Did
No?
you press share screen at the bottom?
Yeah,
Yeah,
share the
yeah.
screen, share it
Thought I
again.
did.
I think we were just simultaneously on the same page.
Oh,
There it
okay.
goes.
Now.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So yeah, this guidebook again, with the migration of people to the county of Brant and the growth of the county, including the map, I think is an important piece, and a good educational piece for everyone involved in this. So that sort of thing, and then it goes to a broader question of why connectivity matters. And I think this is great base work. I think this is a good foundation for a guide of this nature. It's kind of what we did when this group first met. We gave the information and why we were coming together and how we can assist. So why connectivity matters, I think, is an important piece as well. And another reason that this guide goes into quite a bit actually is, and Rick, you might be able to lend to this as well. A lot of times connectivity and the technology, the growth of the technology is related to the urban part of our county. And the rural part, why is it important to the rural part? And the ag technology and the use of connectivity and ag performance now is vital. It's instrumental throughout the county. And I think there might be a couple of aha moments in this type of thing with the county. So I think that's important as well. So I think they did a good job there. Table of contents. This is where I might suggest we would change the communication network or communication nature of the guide. It goes straight into case study operations. And when you look at the case study, it uses a little bit of jargon and a technology speak that's explained in the pages following. So I think if we were to do that, I like the case study approach, but you might want to present pages 11, 12, and 13 before you do 7 and 8. So just a couple of technical things, but they do a case study piece in here, which is fantastic. A lot of it is highlighting the ag, use of technology in the ag sector. It also does that a little bit further on as well. And then this is an introduction to how the internet works. Again, this might be put in front of the case studies, but everything that Brett was talking about and that we've been talking about, it's distilled here in kind of real user language. Everything from satellite internet, cable net internet, fixed wireless, what that means, and I think that might be a helpful piece to include if we would look at doing something like this. Goes through that. This section, page 11, I get a little bit tingly when something comes out from my division that involves costs that I can't control or that I haven't asked for permission from gotten approval from council on. So I'm not sure that this is a good idea. And plus they change once it's committed to print. But the way things are going, the costs can change and that sort of thing. As a guide, perhaps, and it is a guidebook, so perhaps there's merit in that. But might be better to provide links to actual pricing that's out there and accessible by the public. So I would maybe not include that section the way that they have it, but routers and modems and all that sort of discussion all happens in here, and I think it's very valuable. The entire guidebook is 45 pages. It's a little bit heavy, but it might not be read cover to cover. It might be read a section at a time as needed. A little bit of information, tips the scales and trying to find a little bit more information. So you might read a little bit and then decide that I'm learning something, I'm going to keep going. And that's what happened with me here on talking about testing your connection. We talked about this as a group, and James was very helpful in showing us ways to test our connection. And then a lot of what we talked about was in here. And then there was a couple of other additional pieces, how different things, such as being on a video call versus an audio call versus streaming music versus Game of Thrones specifically for Mr. Soka here. So you know, there's a lot of information here that is really useful and can be tangible for the everyday Brant user. Just going through, I think the testimonials on page 18. So we start talking about testimonials, and that's the blue section here, Paula and Dave and Salad Day. So this is an actual business, and they talk about how the business uses technology and some of the challenges they had and what they're doing. I think that's valuable. And then the points that they discuss are discussed a little bit further. There's another layer beneath, such as the long-range Wi-Fi antenna. If you just discuss that in a testimonial, a lot of folks might not know what that is, and they go in and explain it here. So it's very transferable. The information leads to additional information. Talks about some helpful points to consider, and then we get into the on-farm technologies. And for us, with the layout of the county and the ag sector being what it is and the importance of it in the county, this was our team's heavily engaged in that right now as part of our strategy. This was extremely eye-opening and I found useful. And I think it would be very useful if, certainly for the ag community, but also for the rest of the community that would look to ag and just see how technologically integrated the ag business is now. And this does a great job in explaining that and how it's used. Again, there's a section here for $4.99 a year. You can get a bundle with Ag Expert Accounting. Again, that had me drop to the floor. We might not, being that specific could be problematic in a guidebook like this. So we might want to stay away from things like that. Goes into some of the software applications that are available, which we could not do. It's really dependable on what we determine is the objective of this guidebook. So I won't go through too much of the rest of it. I think we get to the back of the guidebook here. There's a fantastic section on the glossary. So like the last 3 pages or so, there's a glossary here. A lot of great information for that base level. So when people are reading the announcements that come out about the SWIFT project and the various projects and enhancements, they can relate a little bit more how that speaks to them at their level in their everyday life. So I think that's somewhat of a helpful piece here. And then there's a business directory, and that might speak, Madam Chair, to your group and the directory that was put out recently, the business directory, having a directory of businesses that are in the technology field in the county that people can relate to and can go and see and speak with. That might be a helpful inclusion as well. So I wanted to take a minute and provide a look at the guide. I'm okay in stopping the share now unless we have any questions prior. But I thought it would be a good idea to just hear a high level about the guide from a municipal staffing standpoint. A guide like this would be helpful whenever perhaps we take phone calls, perhaps council as well, when phone calls and inquiries about it. Having something like this might be helpful. I just think for the everyday person and who we're here to serve, this could be a helpful project to think about putting together from this group. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Russ.
Oh, there we go. We're good.
There we are. Thank you. Dave, I think you were the one that gave us that guidebook originally. Where did that come from? Was that an economic development group, or who put that together?
Well, Madam Chair, one of the questions that often comes up is, what is the role of the municipality in this whole issue around broadband? And municipalities have taken slightly different approaches, as we all know. But one of the things that I've noted in my travels is educating and helping people understand technology and how it works and how it can support their business and their lives is certainly a role that the municipality can take and has taken in a number of municipalities. And Wellington County's guidebook, has often come up as a good example of something that could be replicated in other jurisdictions fairly easily, from the point of view of there's a lot of, as Russ so eloquently points out, can be transferred. And then you sort of insert some of our local information in there, and bang, you know, you're not reinventing the wheel. You've got something that's useful. Some people, like old farts like me, like it on paper sometimes, but you know, if you put that online on the county website, there'll be people who could read it online and use it. And so, you know, I suggested to the economic development folks that might be a good resource if they're able to devote some time and effort to putting something together for Brant. And, you know, as a volunteer in the community, I certainly would be willing to help with something like that. When I read it, and I often reread it, I always learn something new when I look at it.
Right. So resources might be an issue, Russ. I don't know if you could speak to that or not, but.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I mean, it's not on the docket in any of our work plans right now, but that's you know, these are living, breathing creatures that we go to every day. And you know, from this committee to provide a motion of advice to council, and council then sit through the committee process up to council to provide direction to staff. Some of this would clearly not fall all on economic development on my team. Of course, James would be involved, and perhaps Greg would want to speak a little bit to it right away. Who knows? You know, it might be a collective effort among a few divisions to put the best product forward. Believe me, I don't think you want economic development providing the technical information on this piece. I think James would be where that would go. But it would be, you know, what do you have available in terms of volume on your work plan with your staff, and when can we pull this out and that sort of thing. But it would take direction from council, and staff would be able to work at a timeline on this.
Go ahead, James.
James, recognize James Rickard.
Through you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo some of my comments on the document itself. When I first read through the document, I was quite surprised. And being in the industry, it's actually really interesting to see other perspectives of the actual technology and how it's being used. So I found it a fantastic product, and something that a lot of our rural, it keeps focusing on the farming aspect, but I think it's more of a rural aspect than a farming aspect. And maybe that's a direction we want to go with it, more of a rural connectivity guide versus a farming connectivity guide. So I do find it's going to be a very, very useful product. Two of the concerns I have, one is echoing Russ's comment, is regarding the costs of certain things. It's going to cost you $399 to do that. Maybe we should want to move away from that. The second part, it does talk about specific software to use in there for your accounting software. Use QuickBooks for your accounting. Maybe the county doesn't want to get into advertising for very specific software aspects of that. The technology aspect, reading through the guide, a lot of what they have in there is transferable to the county, and not much needs to change to what the county would actually produce. So very little of the document would change on my aspect regarding the technology usage. I think we should shy away from, like Russ said, putting numbers in there and specific software packages to use.
Okay, thank you. And Dave, recognize.
So yeah, just to follow that up, Madam Chair, perhaps you'll see item 8. I asked that we put that on the agenda just so that we can kind of focus on maybe doing some kind of an interim report to committee and then on to council. As Russ points out, maybe one of the recommendations that we could consider is that Brant County, you know, move forward with the production of something similar as a resource. You know, without worrying about getting too much into detail of what would be in it and the how, but at least get that as one of our recommendations. And we can talk about that again, but I think that would be certainly I would be willing to make the motion or support it, whatever the committee decides, really.
Councillor Miller, you have the floor.
Before we get into a motion, I just wanted to, I thought it was good in like the comments that have already come forward. I learned quite a bit from it. So, but what I was more interested from a municipality point of view was, and David, you mentioned that earlier. What can we as a municipality do to move this forward? And in it, they talked about what Wellington County's doing. And I was wondering if we could get some comment, Madam Chair, through our guests from the Ministry of Infrastructure, as far as what Wellington County put in there, because they talk about Wellington County is, quote, maps the gaps, and they advocate to local ISPs. And I was wondering is that something that we should be pursuing aggressively, or is that or not?
So Brett, are you comfortable to respond to Councillor Miller's query?
Sure, and if I miss anything, Councillor Miller, please remind me if there's other parts of the question to answer. This question has come up in discussions with municipalities. Is there a way to better engage with internet service providers so that they're aware of the needs and interests and can more aggressively do work in the area, provide services? I don't have a specific recommendation that leads to a particular outcome other than it's good practice, or I believe and have seen that it's good practice to maintain open channels of communication with all internet service providers in the area, to try to acquire any information that they're willing to provide you on future plans and current service areas, and to see to what degree they are willing to share information about plans to expand their networks, or if there's concerns coming from residents about improving services and things of that nature. While there have been competitive programs in place, and a number of them have closed, for example, Universal Broadband Fund and ICON are not receiving applications, the auction is coming to a close. We had also encouraged that municipalities engage internet service providers to encourage the ISPs to bid into those programs so that they could expand their networks and provide better services. So I think in terms of relationships, it's a good idea to try to engage and maintain those lines of communication so you have a bit better of line of sight of who's doing what and where. But I don't know if there's a particular outcome that you're trying to achieve, or any that I would advocate for, other than those relationships are good for you to have information available on what's happening within your municipality or county, I should say.
Just ExploreNet is big in our area, so I've actually got a couple of them on speed dials for when I got problems. But I appreciate your input on that, because we are struggling with that whole, we want to get it done. What's the best way we can help? So thank you.
Thank you. So I recognize Pam DeVries. Pam, you have a question?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the group. Brett had mentioned earlier that sometimes service providers will put their technology of the fiber or whatever into a specific area and then come knocking. And indeed, Bell came knocking 2 weeks ago to explain that they were in my area. However, if we could put that in a guide where we do know which company has been providing the service to that specific area, that does give people the luxury of knowing perhaps who they should change their service with.
Any comments?
Madam Chair, if I could, I think it's a great idea to at least make residents aware that they might have some options beyond, their current provider, and might not be aware that there's, new infrastructure being built by company X or company Y. I mean, I hear though that and I respect the comment that the municipality really can't endorse one company over another. It has to be kind of neutral. I know you're not saying that, but we have to be careful in the guidebook, if we do one, that we make that point clear. Like, we're not recommending Bell. We don't want you to call us when Bell doesn't provide you with the service or something crazy like that. So but yeah, I think a general awareness of who the providers are and how to contact them, and what projects are going on. If the guidebook was sort of virtual and online, then there could be an update that people could, in the guidebook hard copy, it would say, for an up-to-date list of what's going on in Paris or with this part of Brant, check out the website at this location. So anyway, I've said it before, I think it'd be a great project for this committee to consider recommending to council.
Okay, recognize the mayor, Mayor Bailey.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to the committee or to the working group. I think the guidebook is a great idea. I think maybe what I'll do too is take it back to Brant Municipal Enterprises to see if they'll stand behind it too. I think if we take it back and soup through this and make it more local, make it local with more contact information as to what's relevant for the county. There's so many times people people come everywhere for advice on how to do this and how to do that, what the different strengths of service are, even in our libraries and our service buildings. People come into the county office here all the time, wondering things, and our girls at the desk are very good at knowing most things, maybe more than most people do, about all kinds of little things to do with the internet and with broadband. And they hear bits and pieces in different places in the county. Again, the libraries and people, we're educated people, but we're people that are curious and really want to know things. And I think if we could hand them something, we have a brochure rack at every place, every library, every county building, every arena, places like that. I think when people are waiting around, like they used to say, if you wanted something read, put it at a doctor's office and people read it while they're waiting and they know things. But this is a crossover period of time where some people, as someone referred to themselves as an old fart, want things to be done on paper. They still they still want to have something to hold where there's phone numbers on the back, there's contact people on the back, there's things like that, emails. And so I think we could make a much smaller version of this, make it completely local to the county of Brant and put it everywhere. And the funding won't be a problem if we get to, obviously this group could come and speak to council. And I know that Councilor Miller has put a lot of hours into all of this stuff. And Councilor Miller and I were both at the announcement yesterday in Burford, which I wished were more clear. As you said, it did seem like something else or something different, but it is coming up against an election. And so I wasn't surprised to hear that it was the same one once I got there, but I kind of thought I was coming to something different. So I would think that as soon as this committee could put together a presentation for council, you would have council support, and the cost to put something like this together could be found in quite a few different places. So thank you for your presence. Thank you for your time today. Did you leave? You left us.
You might have.
We had him for longer than I thought we would. Thank you all for getting him here and keeping him here as long as you did. Thank you.
Yes, Michelle is still with us, but I do think that Brett he probably had something else he had to go to, Michelle. I'm not sure, but that's fine. We didn't intend to take up too much of his time, so.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. I just received an email from Brett. He just had to go to another meeting, but wanted to pass along his regards.
Thank you, Briar. I was hoping it wasn't that his internet went down.
No.
All right, well, you heard the mayor. He thinks this is a wonderful idea. So am I hearing a motion? Okay, can we say it out loud, Dave?
Sure. So I would move that the County of Brant consider or move ahead with the production of a connectivity guidebook as a resource for residents and businesses on broadband connectivity. Keep it simple.
And provide funding to allow that to
from the many sources of funding that the mayor spoke of to make it the best publication ever.
All right, and do I have a seconder? Pam. Thank you. And all in favor? I think I'm allowed to vote too, aren't I?
Yep.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Dave.
And Madam Chair, if I could, it just goes right into item 8, really, which is if that's where you were going to the next item.
I was.
We can then include this recommendation in our interim report through to committee and council. I put it on the agenda because I wanted to sort of scope out a rough timeline, because I've heard a rumor there's a municipal election this fall. I'm not sure yet, but I've heard. And let's assume that in the summertime, you know, people aren't meeting as their normal, as they normally would. So sort of working backwards from that, I was thinking if we were going to do a report or an interim report, probably getting in front of committee or council in the June or July timeframe. Is that, you know, if we could figure something out and work backwards from there, then maybe we could script something together and sign off on it before that. So I just throw that out there for discussion.
Right, because do we get into budget timelines and all of that? So if it needs to get into a current budget situation, is there kind of a cutoff of when we would need to make this presentation?
Well, yes, and I with the election coming, I'm, you know, based on my previous life, I know that really after the fall, there really is nothing that, you know, the municipality, other than keeping things going, that goes on. And really it will be the new council that would perhaps take up any recommendations that we would have anyway. Or, you know, the council could obviously ask staff to get started on it now and then bring it forward when they can.
Recognize Mayor Bailey.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we have voted at council. We are going to work right straight through. And you're right, there is rumors that there's going to be an election of some sort in October. But we have decided as a council that we are going to work right through. We're not going to take some time off. The people that are most affected by it obviously are the mayor and the councilors that are trying to get reelected or run again. And that's just what you have to do when you've decided to be in office. And it's not fair to stop business. I'm not sure that I like the whole dead duck period where nothing gets done. So I would suggest that you bring this to Brant Municipal Enterprises as a delegation at the next meeting to let I actually chair that committee, and come before us and let us know. Sort of in theory, maybe you could put something together and let us know whether it would be a 10-page thing or a 20-page thing, so that maybe some of the funding could come from that. But I would also suggest you come to council as soon as you can as a delegation. And if Councillor Miller and I have to step away from it, that's fine. I still think that you'd have tons of support. But I would think you should come as soon as possible. And we still have time before an October election to get this started and direct staff to get it done for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How do you feel about June or July timeframe as a target to get in front of council? Is that too, does that work? We might need to meet as a committee once or twice more, maybe.
I think through you, Madam Chair, I think the clearer you are in your ask, the sooner staff will be able to complete what you need to have done. I don't think you should come to council or come to Brant Municipal Enterprises with just an idea that's not structured. If you can tell us what you need and how much you think it would cost, I think you would have a better chance of getting it done quicker.
Recognize Russ. Russ, you got a comment, question?
Just a point of clarification, Madam Chair. Are we discussing the guidebook or the interim report? So that Member Cash had mentioned, the interim report to committee. Is it the report that is to come in June and July, or is it the presentation of the guidebook, or are we merging these? I just point of clarification.
Dave, I'll let you speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. sort of my understanding of what we've sort of been talking about is, I think perhaps Mr. Mayor is saying you could come as soon as you're ready to Brant Municipal Enterprises to get going on the guidebook. But make sure you know what you're asking for. And I get that, and I hear that loud and clear. And I see that project as part of our interim report to council. We would say, you know, we see the need for this guidebook, and we've done this and this to get that project going. And here's a couple of other, if there are other bits of information or recommendations for council, or just a general report of what we've done, you know, touching on this issue of the mapping and underserved and all of that. I think probably a report to council about that would be helpful. So that is sort of in the interim report, Russ, as I see it. And sort of concurrently with that, we could get going, if I'm understanding the mayor's advice, get going on the guidebook side of things in terms of perhaps asking Brant Municipal Enterprises for their support in some way of getting that project going. Mr. Mayor, am I getting that right?
Mayor Bailey? We got to get you off mute.
Absolutely, that's exactly right.
All right, Russ, does that clarify it?
Yeah, so there's two activities taking place.
Yes.
And I'm in with both. Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. So that was number 8. Now, Dave, have you got more to add to that?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Just the only thing that I have sent out an updated tracker. I'm sure you've all read it in detail after I sent it to everybody, but I wanted to just make sure that we have an item on the agenda. This is a regular item to receive that. I updated some of the activities that I was aware of since our last meeting, and I corrected and updated a few other items in there. So unless anyone has any questions on it, one thing I was going to say is it's helpful if, for example, there's a number of projects being announced and trying to remember which ones were previously announced, or whether it's new, or whether it's a change to an existing one. And so this tracker will help you, because I'm trying anyway, just to, you know, as a chronological thing, just list them with a link to where the information is, and then you can go and look and review it. So I think just a motion to receive the updated tracker, and I've asked the clerk if possible, maybe she can add that to the agenda package that gets posted online.
Briar, do we need a motion overall to receive the presentation, all the presentations and correspondence? And would this be considered part of that?
Yeah, we can do that. Through you,
All right.
Madam Chair.
So is there anything else then, Dave, with respect to that? Okay. So
Not
I
unless
think,
anyone has any questions on it.
okay. So I think we can make that part of a motion to receive right at the end, if we do it the same way we did the last time, and move
that's
on
fine.
to, is that all right? Okay, so
Yep.
item 9 is communications. And as you said, we just received the updated broadband tracker report. And Greg, you had sent a letter to the Ministry of Infrastructure. Did you want to speak to that a little further?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I believe the letter is pretty self-explanatory. We got a good response, and our questions were answered. I think it's going to be a positive outcome. Well, I think if I'm invited back to this committee, I will bring some follow-up information once the ministry has put all these guidelines in place, but they actually don't have the tools there actually for us to access yet. So once we access those tools and those learning opportunities, I can probably bring back a more solid plan and the items that the action items that we have in place to deliver these services.
All right, so I've just made a note then to make sure we invite you back
Okay.
to the next meeting.
Well,
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam.
We do too.
He's looking forward to it.
We absolutely are. All right, do we have other business? Item 10, other business. Yes.
Madam
Dave
Chair,
Cash.
So I'll be very quick. Is when the original agenda was produced, we had submitted, the chamber had submitted some items for the agenda. One was the Brant County new draft official plan. And I fully understand taking it off the agenda for this round, but I just want to make sure we don't lose track of that and have it deferred or bring it back. Really, the intent of putting it on the agenda was to understand. I think Russ had mentioned at a previous meeting that there were some new revisions or new policies in the draft official plan regarding broadband, how to support better internet in the official plan. I recognize the official plan is still draft and the ministry hasn't approved it and so on, but I wanted to sort of have a discussion here at the committee about what those new policies were and if there's any advice that we can give Brant County. This would be a good time. It hasn't been finalized yet, so potentially there would be an opportunity if there was any need for revisions or changes that could be made. So under other business, maybe I could ask that it be brought forward at maybe for the next meeting, and maybe somebody from Brant County could give us a very brief description of what's in there, or I just throw it out.
Russ, recognize Russ Press.
For you, Madam Chair, Member Cash. I'm not sure that it was me, but that's fine if it was. I'm not sure if it was James or me. I think we were bouncing back and forth between that. But just want to be clear that the new official plan, first of all, the draft and where it's at currently is available on the website. And if you just go to the website and search new OP, new official OP, new official plan, it comes up, and it's a lot of reading, but there is a current version of it right there. First of all, our planning services department, they would be the ones that would be commenting on what's in the OP and what might be best to be served in the OP and that sort of thing. Much like the technology side, that's not an area that I would want to wade in about my toenails on. So I think if it were to be discussed later, Madam Chair, it would be prudent to invite a member of Planning Services that would discuss it. That being said, the current OP procedure has come to a standstill. We've not received remarks from the province. So what can be said about the OP and how deep it can be discussed is really restricted because it's not been adopted and it's still a draft. So probably best to, if there is a need and a desire for more discussion on that, it would be best to invite a member of Planning Services to come to discuss.
Okay. Mayor Bailey, recognize.
And through you, Madam Chair, Mr. Cash, when you do go into the portal, if you see a tracking number, call me.
Oh.
We're looking for it as quickly as we can to get the OP back.
Yes, stuff, Mr. Mayor, through you, Madam Chair, stuff goes into Queen's Park and it goes into a black hole sometimes. I've experienced that myself, but but yeah, the only said, I just think we have a duty, if you go back to our terms of reference, to just to make sure we know what's in there, because I think it's pretty good. I've had a look at it, and I could even, it's only 5 paragraphs. I could send it out to everybody if you'd like, but it's up to the county, I guess, whatever you want to do on that.
I want to recognize Pam DeVries. She's got a question on this. Pam.
So should we have a sub meeting then to come up with a more solid type of proposal to bring to both the Brant Municipal Enterprise Group and to for our delegation in front of Chamber?
It's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea.
Because it's not going to materialize without us doing so.
Right. Yeah. That's something we can discuss, having an interim meeting, I think, Dave. And
Yes,
I don't know if there's an opportunity for us then to maybe meet with the planning people if there, I think, Dave, your concern is there's an opportunity maybe to make changes or make some recommendations of what you'd like to see in there. And if we wait until the province has answered back and it's been approved, is that too late? Is that, am I getting that right?
Yeah, I mean, the OP is still in draft form. I expect the ministry will probably have some advice about changes that they'd like to see. Whether or not we see any changes, I don't know, but the official plan is sort of a once in a many year lifetime to put policies in place, and you know, improving broadband in Brant is something that I see in the draft. It's really good, and it's more of an awareness thing for our committee. So maybe an approach, not to create work for people, but maybe an approach is I could just send out section 8.12 of the draft official plan to this group, and you can have a look through it. Perhaps if we need to put it on the agenda in the future, we can. If anybody has any questions or whatever, is that a good approach maybe?
I believe so.
Okay, so I'll do that. I'll send out a 1,000-page email then with this one page attached, and people, if they have any comments, they can bring it up at our next meeting. So let's agree perhaps that we put it on the meeting just if anybody has any questions. How's that?
Okay. Very good. All right.
Okay, so back to Pam's question about a little subgroup to meet to figure out how many hundreds of millions of dollars we're going to ask Brant Municipal Enterprises for. No, Mr. Mayor, we're not going to do that. But I'd be happy to help out with that if Sue, if you wanted to pick a few people to have a discussion prior to our next meeting.
Sure. James, would you want to be involved in that? Would that be of use to you? Just
I could be a sounding board on the technology aspect. Yeah.
That's what I was just wondering. It's always good to have somebody there that understands that piece of it. So would appreciate that. Yeah, I think we can do that. And that'll help sort out some things. And then we can bring it up for discussion again at the next committee meeting on where things are at. Agreed?
And maybe the clerk could let us know when the next meeting of Brant Municipal Enterprises is, unless Mr. Mayor knows. And so we have a timeline as to when we need to get in front of them, or request, I guess, to be in front of them. So anyway, I'm sure that'll all come together.
Briar, do you know that?
Sure, yes. Through you, Madam Chair. So just keeping with the same pattern that we've been doing, I proposed that the next meeting date would be Thursday, April the 19th. And I'm not sure if you guys would like to do 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. as this time.
Yeah, and I'd like to express my thanks to the committee for moving it to 2 today. I'm happy to go back to 1 if you'd like.
I think I'm getting some head nods. Everyone 1 o'clock. Okay, then if we move it back to the 1 p.m. Okay. All right.
But I through you, Madam Chair, to the group, I think that Briar, what we were asking is, could you please give us the date of the next Brant Municipal Enterprise meeting? Should you have that readily available?
I'm not sure if I have that available. Let me check.
Okay. If someone could send us that would be helpful, and also the next few council meetings.
Okay, not a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. All right. So I think we need Briar, if I've got this correct, we do need a motion to receive any presentation correspondence.
Yes,
for today's meeting. So do I have a motion? Rick Stroka and Pam, you were second. Did I see a hand go up? And all in favor to receive all the presentation? Thank you. And motion passed. All right. Is there anything else? I think we're there with 7 minutes to spare. All right, well, I want to thank the ministry again for coming out. Michelle, thank you very much for being with us today. And please pass along a thank you to Brett again. We really appreciate your time. Very informative. I think everybody on this meeting today will tell you they learned a lot they didn't know prior to. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having us. And we'll be following up with an email with regards to the name of the ombudsman and a question that I believe Councillor Miller asked earlier. So you'll be hearing from us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone else. We'll see you soon. Appreciate your time.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now. Christine, don't talk so much next time.
I'll try.
Bye, Christine.
Bye, everybody.